Good morning, I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for streaming with us. In today's update, we have breaking news from Russia. Jailed opposition leader Alexy Navalny says he's ending his 24-day hunger strike after a dire warning from his doctors. The doctors published an open letter saying Navalny's blood tests showed his kidneys were failing and he would likely soon fall into a fatal coma. Thousands of people joined protests across Russia to support Navalny after his team warned he could be days away from death. Navalny was arrested in January when he returned to Russia for the first time since surviving a near-fatal poisoning with a nerve agent last summer. And 4 astronauts are now on their way to the International Space Station.
And liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour, and Crew 2.
This morning, NASA and SpaceX successfully launched the same Falcon 9 rocket used to send a crew to the ISS in November, ushering in a new era of reusability in space exploration. Commander Megan MacArthur from the U.S. is in the pilot seat, steering the Crew Dragon spacecraft on its 23-hour flight. The historic mission will focus on better understanding of viruses and their treatments. And a CDC advisory panel is expected to decide today whether to resume Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccinations. U.S. health officials put the vaccine on hold last week when 6 women experienced rare blood clots after getting the shot. The panel could decide to keep the vaccine on hold, clear it for use with a safety warning, or advise certain groups of people to avoid that particular vaccine. And earlier today on GMA, Director of the National Institute of Health, Dr. Francis Collins, discussed the importance of putting a pause on the J&J vaccine. Let's listen.
I know you don't want to get into the CDC advisory panel, but just give us your thoughts on this Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the risks.
Well, since 2 of my grandchildren have received it, I'm very much hoping that we will come forward with a really positive sense here of how this vaccine can save lives. And as you just heard in the lead up to this is a 1 in a million kind of risk that has been identified of this rare blood clotting problem. And yet at the same time, the CDC's advisory committee is going to look very seriously at all the data and try to make a recommendation. The fact that the Europeans already did so a couple of days ago and decided it was okay to proceed just with a warning on the vaccine so that everybody knows is encouraging. That maybe the U.S. will decide to do the same, but I don't want to judge what their consequence might be here of their decisions. I think it is important to point out that this is a treatable condition if you recognize it right away. And one of the reasons I think it's been good to have this pause is to get everybody apprised of that so that all physicians know that this is something to watch out for and can be prepared to treat it appropriately if it should happen again in the future.
Vaccines continue to ramp up. We've got approaching 30% of the adult population vaccinated right now. But now it's coming to the hard part where we might have the supply of the vaccines outstripping the demand. What do you say to a friend or a neighbor who's still saying, you know, I just don't want to get it?
You know, one of the things I don't want to do is shake my finger and sort of get judgmental about people, because people have legitimate questions. So I'm doing a lot of listening to what people's concerns are. One of the things, though, that I'd like to share is now that my wife and I have both been immunized and she's gotten through her phase and I have too, we know that we are now fully protected. We were able to invite another couple to come and have dinner with us in our own home around our own dining room table with masks off and have a comfortable conversation and hug each other at the end of the evening. It was marvelous. It was liberating. You felt like this fear that we've all walked around with for 15 months is starting to lift. So for people who haven't gotten to that point yet, think about that part. This is going to give you a wonderful boost of reassurance, or as Oprah said, you'll feel like a superwoman after you have the chance to have your immune system revved up to take this on.
You mentioned masks. Let's talk about masks. I was reading about the 2 out of 3 rule this morning. If you're outdoors, you either need to be distance or mask. If you're indoors, you need to be distance and mask. Is that the right guideline right now?
You know, that's really the CDC's call, and they are seriously looking at what to recommend, particularly for outside now, with so many people now being immunized. If you are immunized, do you need to wear a mask outside, or is it time to say that's no longer necessary? Watch them and see what they have to say. But let me come back to what we can all do. If you're somebody listening to this who has been immunized, you can be an ambassador to explain how this has changed your life. The trends are all looking good. People who were resistant, people people who are waiting to see what happened are beginning to say, yeah, I guess it's time. The sooner we get there, the sooner we'll have this virus packing and sending itself off somewhere else where we can go back to living a life that we all had hoped to get to.
All right, thanks to George and Dr. Collins for that interview. And as the U.S. faces a crisis at the border, climate change is contributing to more migration out of Central America. Land that once produced plentiful crops is now called the dry corridor as people there struggle to live or leave. Matt Gutman has that story.
High above these unforgiving fields outside of Hocotan, Guatemala, is the clump of mud huts Leocadia Diaz has called home for 90 years now. There, surrounded by her dozens of descendants, she weaves those mats. It takes 3 days to make a single one. The skill takes years to learn. She taught her daughters and the kids their traditions passed down for generations. When we meet her outside her daughter's home, her face lights up when we ask about the crops they used to have here. The crops have shriveled, and many of the young men have left. All those little grandkids take us to the family fields, and they show us the stunted corn.
This is the village's cornfield. They're spread all over the hillside here. You can see the stalks that are left, and just the stunted corn that's here. When they don't have rain, and then they have 2 hurricanes coming in, this is what's left.
It's a common sight in what's called the dry corridor, a swath of drought-battered land covering parts of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And what's happening here is mirrored the world over. The poorest communities are often living perilously close to the edge, on subsistence rations that depend on the compliance of increasingly erratic weather patterns. It has contributed to a 500% increase in migration from 2010 to 2015. Droughts over the past decade have decimated Leocadia's land. Her family is among the 3.5 million people in the dry corridor in desperate need of humanitarian assistance. And the droughts are transforming what was once one of the world's most fertile regions permanently.
El problema no solo se traduce a las condiciones o a los efectos del cambio climático, sino también a los efectos que está teniendo este cambio climático en la agricultura y obviamente los efectos que está teniendo la baja productividad agrícola en el desarrollo socioeconómico de las poblaciones. Creo que en menos de 20 años vamos a tener totalmente un área declarada como desértica, totalmente desértica, ¿verdad? Desértica en términos de que los suelos no son productivos.
Agricultural engineer Circe Cordon took us to one of those fields. And she says the only way the region can survive is if the farmers and their children learn sustainable agriculture.
And this is what one of those devastated crops look like. The farmers in this region tell us that they've lost about 95% of the corn here. Now, that is the main staple. And this field used to feed everybody in this village, but no more. Now the people here go hungry.
That's because the land Leocadia has loved has become hostile. The roads to the villages here are as unforgiving as the soil. It's why many are still forced to haul cane or wood the old way, on their backs. Those roads are a huge obstacle in getting produce to the market. And it was on one of those dirt tracks just below the village that we watched men load palm fronds onto the overloaded pickup. Future roofs for houses. Children with those machetes gathered around to watch, and they use slingshots to fell still unripened green mangoes. Lunch. For breakfast, they tell us they have beans. They show us their slingshots.
¿Qué comes? ¿Qué comes? ¿Frijoles? Okay. ¿Y para cena? ¿Tortilla? ¿Solo tortilla? ¿Con algo o solamente tortilla? ¿Con sal?
Sometimes they'll catch a bird, they say, and eat it. Malnutrition is endemic here in Guatemala. Nearly half of the children here are stunted because of it.
So Nelson is 11, Eileen is 12, and they are about the size of my 6-year-old.
The head of this village tells me he knows the kids are hungry.
Yo conozco varios niños que están aquí que viven en crisis. Tal vez han comido un tiempo ahorita.
Since they can no longer rely on crops for food, they need money. And for that, many head north. It's why the head of the village estimates that about 60% of his villagers intend on leaving for the United States. Isabel Hernandez-Lopez's children are lucky. They've eaten chicken before, but not in the past year or two. These days, it's the ubiquitous beans and tortillas. As his girls boil that cauldron of beans on their outside stove, he tells me he's got 10 kids, but one of them is gone. That's his 17-year-old son, who crossed into the U.S. about 2 weeks ago. He's now in New Jersey. But the cost has been enormous.
¿Cuánto costan los coyotes para el viaje?
De 100,000 para adelante.
¿Qué vas a hacer si tu hijo no puede pagar dinero?
Entregar lo que uno tiene, por ejemplo, un terrenito ahí. Si nosotros no conseguimos el dinero para pagar, entregar el terrenito o la casa.
Before their droughts, their acre-and-a-half farm would provide enough beans and corn for the family. Now, to avoid starvation, his kids weave these small wicker baskets for a local bottler for about $21 a week. But a week's supply of corn costs the family about $20 a week. He tells me this life is untenable, which is why, as soon as his son repays the loan sharks, he's also headed northward. I asked whether he'll miss his family. He said he'll miss them terribly, but he wants to offer them a better life. To survive, those who stay will have to adapt. Children here are now learning new techniques, sustainable agriculture. To mark Earth Day, ecologist Circe Cordon has brought kids to this barren land to teach them a new skill. This is called seed bombing. Instead of planting each seed independently, which they've been doing for generations, they scatter each seeded mud clump widely, hoping the runoff from those much-needed rains finds the seeds and nourishes them. Each fistful containing the seeds of survival and perhaps hope that one day this part of the earth may again be healthy enough to feed its young. Matt Gutman in Hocotan, Guatemala for ABC News.
All right, Matt, thanks for that. And with just 2 days until the Oscars, an unlikely duo is stealing the spotlight in Minari. We sat down with a 73-year-old Korean acting legend and the 7-year-old who's just getting started. More on that interview after the break. Welcome back. We're just 2 days away from the Oscars, and a dynamic duo is stealing the spotlight and our hearts. 73-year-old Yoo Jung-yoon and 7-year-old Alan Kim star in the indie film Minari, nominated for Best Picture. Our Juju Chang sat down with both of them to talk about this awards season and what this film means to them.
They're the unlikely dynamic duo attracting Oscar spotlight.
Pretty boy.
73-year-old Korean legend Yoo Jung-yoon and then 7-year-old newbie Alan Kim stealing scenes in Minari.
I'm not pretty. I'm good looking.
The low-budget indie film pierces through with the struggle of a Korean-American family who moves to rural Arkansas, toiling in a chicken hatchery to pursue their version of the American dream.
How's your daddy like that new farm? He growing things good, doing things right?
Yes.
Minari, a metaphor for the resilient Korean herb that can sprout in the most difficult conditions.
My character doesn't like the grandma at first, but throughout the movie, she starts growing on him.
The film nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Supporting Actress for Yoon.
It's unreal to me. Strong boy.
But the grandma and grandson portrayals already winning awards around the globe.
Alan Kim Minari.
Little Alan, with 0 prior acting experience, melting hearts at the Critics' Choice Awards.
Is this true?
Meanwhile, Yoon has earned numerous trophies and accolades over her 50-year career in South Korea.
Yeah, Jung-yoon.
But her blunt humor went viral after the BAFTAs, known as the British Oscars.
British people known as very snobbish people, and they approve me as a good actor. So I'm very, very privileged and happy. I admire them very much. And I was just kind of 3 in the morning, I was thinking, with lack of my English, I was saying it like that.
Every piece of emotion were smushed together into one.
What are you looking forward to most about going to the Oscars?
Winning.
Alan isn't nominated for an Oscar, but his director, Lee Isaac Chung, is nominated for both director and screenwriter. Chung wrote the script based on his own childhood in Arkansas and his own grandmother, hoping to reframe the American dream.
It's not about the hard work and success. It's about the sacrifice that everybody makes. I wanted to highlight my grandmother and my mom and even my dad in the factories, you know, the sort of work that they did when they're very much invisible, the work that they were doing out of love.
I'm curious if you think about sort of representation and the Asian American experience.
I'm wary of creating films that are merely about representation. It's a story about family. It's a story about redemption. It's a story about many different things. And this family happens to be Asian, but that's not the reason why this story has to exist.
Written in 2018 as his sort of farewell to Hollywood, Chung was preparing to leave the industry after a modest decade in film.
I didn't know if it would do anything for my career. So I was trying to put everything I was feeling into it, just so that I would feel like I didn't leave anything behind.
Did you have any idea that it would become this big a deal?
Of course not. No, there was a part of me that just thought this screenplay is just going to sit on my computer, and one day I'm going to let my daughter read it when she's older, just so she can see like what I was working on when I was younger.
That all changed when his script landed in the hands of producer Christina Oh, a fellow Korean American whose partners include Brad Pitt, Dee Gardner, and Jeremy Kleiner at Plan B.
It's like the power of his script. Like, we read it and we're so moved.
What makes it so powerful?
The feeling like, oh my God, somebody understands like how I grew up. From like the grandmother visiting and bringing like bags of Korean spices and dried anchovies. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and be like, my grandma was the exact same way. It was just replace the dried anchovies with, you know, X.
Oh also insisted the Korean dialogue stay in the script. And with that green light, Oh and Chung hit the ground running, scrambling to start production in 3 months.
We had less than $2 million. There's something about making something with very little money and very little time. You're there because you love the material. Because by no means did anyone get like any sort of payday on this.
The film was shot in 25 days under the hot Tulsa, Oklahoma summer sun, much to the distress of its biggest star.
The first day, the AC went out, and it was just a mess. So, but looking at Isaac, he was all sweating, and I'm over 70 years old lady. I'm very temperamental when he and I'm upset, but he was always calm, and he always say, "I got it." That was, to me, was the most beautiful sound from the director.
If I lose my cool, then the ship is going to sink in some way. So I just knew that I had to keep it together and keep it in control. I grew up seeing her in a lot of TV shows and movies. She herself is so lovable, unpredictable, funny, irreverent. So there was just nobody else who could do this.
Yoon has 2 sons and is a grandmother herself, which may be why she instantly connected with Alan, who plays her grandson.
When you are little, you don't understand. You are very ignorant.
Even in her 70s, she can't forgive herself for how she treated her great-grandmother, a Korean War refugee.
She used the water, you know, reuse it again because of water shortage. Then to me, she was dirty, so I don't like her. She passed away long time ago, and now still it's breaking my heart. Every time we're talking about my great-grandmother.
That empathy and humanization, so deftly portrayed on screen, has made her a front-runner for Best Supporting Actress.
It is rewarding your instincts to go with your gut and not go with the biggest paycheck.
I'm old enough. Whether the money or fame is not important. People, my friends, is important.
Oh, it's spectacular.
As for her young co-star, he'll be turning 9 just before Sunday's ceremony.
Happy
Happy birthday to you.
Safe to say, we all know what he just wished for.
All right, thanks to Juju Chang for that. It doesn't seem like he's wishing for it. Seems like he's pretty confident it's going to happen. For more on Hollywood's biggest night, I want to bring in ABC News contributor and SiriusXM radio host Mike Muse. Mike, thanks for being here. I mean, that interview is just adorable. So let's talk about the Best Picture category, which Minetti is just one of several. This year's really full of films that tackle cultural issues. What do you make of that?
It is, but that interview was fantastic. I mean, that grandmother got me choked up a little bit and talking about how she used to ridicule her own great-grandmother and how she feels bad for that, right? And I see why this film was so strong, because the empathy throughout was there in every single actor. And in particular in her role, in her relationship with her grandchild in the movie, that's what's really hooked me to Minari. And I actually had Minari as predicted as one of the top contenders in the film. And because you and I always talk about this, but film for me, it holds up a mirror to society. And I think this year we've never seen the film categories do just that in almost every single film. There's a social construct. You look at Minari, that is a multi-generational immigration tale. The challenge of immigrants who come into America always has to do that delicate dance of maintaining their culture, maintaining their identity, while also understanding the different ways of America. And as you and I both know, that's different depending upon which region you are in the country. And so there's always this notion of who am I, what is my place, how do I fit in, and particularly multi-generational. But then you look at the two films, Judas and the Black Messiah, as well as The Trial of Chicago 7. Both of those really place the Black Panther Party in a really different light, Diane. We've always seen the Black Panther Party painted with such negativity from this very myopic lens and myopic point of view. But through these two movies, we're able to see the greatness of the Black Panther Party, the range of the Black Panther Party, and really what the Black Panther Party really stood for at its core. And I really felt like they were in control of the narrative, and we've never seen that done before. You look at Promising Young Woman, we've never seen a tale of, in the backdrop of this Me Too movement, the sexual assault that is happening for women. We've always seen women in this victimization standpoint of view. But in this movie, we've seen this as someone who rises as somewhat of a vigilante, fighting to take back the rights of women, and women owning their bodies, women owning their sexuality, and women choosing when and when they don't want to have sexual engagement. And it was such a creative lens and bent on that that was really fantastic. Then you look at Nomadland. Nomadland was about literally a tale of nomads. And I got to be honest with you, this is something that I didn't know existed. You talking about an Invisible Americans or the Silent America, I didn't know that was happening. And so it showed us the lifestyle of this nomadic people and this nomadic tale. And so for that, and then, oh, by the way, The Sound of Metal, disability. Disability is never at the forefront of a lead of a movie, rarely. And so for this to happen was just really fantastic. And it just really puts America, the tapestry of who and what America is through film.
And Sound of Metal does it just so well. You really feel like you're living his journey as you watch that film. But I want to go over to the actors now, because there's a lot of diversity among the acting nominees. But Best Supporting Actor, that category has this interesting thing going on where two actors, Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya, both from Judas and the Black Messiah, are competing against each other. And many were asking after those nominees were named, well, who's the lead in that film then? But how do you think that category is going to shake out, given how many awards Kaluuya has already received, but the fact that he's competing with his own co-star?
That's a great question. I think that's something you and I can pull out much later for a different segment. There's not even enough time to break down how that narrative of who actually is the lead comes out. But this category I'm really excited about, the diversity of this category. For the first time, you're seeing 3 Black male actors in one category. That of itself is historic when it comes to that. Daniel Kaluuya delivered an incredible performance in Judas and the Black Messiah. Lakeith Stanfield also, too, delivered a wonderful performance in the Judas and the Black Black Messiah. But then you look at Leslie Odom. Leslie Odom delivered a powerful punch in One Night in Miami, really underscoring the empathy and range of that character. And Sacha Baron Cohen, I mean, we have the Jewish actor involved too as well. We actually saw the range of him coming from a different place that we don't get a chance to see Sacha. So this is a category that I am watching very closely, but I do believe Daniel Kaluuya will bring home the statue at the end of the night. The way he was able to capture the chairman, the empathy, the resolve, the resoluteness came out in every single scene that Daniel delivered.
Now this Oscars
and by
also...
the way,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm sorry. If Judas and the Black Messiah wins, this will be the first time that we've seen an all-black male producers winning a statue, and that is with Shaka King, Charles King, and Ryan Coogler. So we're in position to have a very historic night when it comes to race, diversity, and inclusion.
All right, I can't let you leave without putting you on the spot, Mike. Predictions. Who's going to win? Let's have it.
You always do this to me.
You knew it was coming.
I know. I want Judas and the Black Messiah to win for Best Film, but I do believe this is Nomadland's year. I do believe what Chloe Zhao has been able to do, the Academy has signaled that they love this film. They love her. She's nominated for Best Editor, Best Screenplay, Best Director, and now Best Film. Nomadland is going to take it. I also too believe Chloe Zhao will come home the winner for Best Director. When it comes to that, Daniel Kaluuya is actually going to win for Best Supporting Actor, and those are my solid predictions, I would say.
Okay, there are a few categories they're missing, Mike, but we'll let you off the hook just this once. ABC News contributor.
Don't make me choose. I'm shaking right now. I'm shaking.
SiriusXM radio host Mike Muse. Always great to have you, Mike. Thanks.
All right, have a great day.
And that does it for this ABC News Live update. I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for joining us. And remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern with Terry Moran for The Breakdown. Stay safe.
All right, so here we are, one of the elephants. And the cool thing about these guys is that they have really, really, really long trunks, and that's cool. And that's pretty much all there is to say.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.